It's 11 o'clock. This is WDAF, Kansas City.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is George Caldwell from New York, and at this hour, hope for changes in Arab oil policy. Energy Director William Simon says he's now hopeful Arab oil producers will not only end their price increases, but roll back oil prices. But Simon predicts even if the Arab embargo on U.S. shipments ends, American consumers still face shortages. Heavy rains have fallen throughout the day in Los Angeles. Forecasters predict more rain. However, there's one proposal for making good use of the weather. Correspondent Ann Kestner has details from Los Angeles.
Here in California, there are those who are talking about tower power as an alternative during the energy crisis. The term refers to windmills atop towers on rooftops. Solomon Kagan, a young Guerneville, California businessman, is selling such windmills, which he imports from Australia. If the wind's blowing, the windmills, which cost $1,000 and up, can generate enough electricity to power homes much of the time. Extra power churned up by the wind generators can be stored in special batteries, good for 3 windless days. Ann Kestner, ABC News, Los Angeles.
It's time for Fully Threaded Radio.
It is Fully Threaded Radio, voice of the FCH Sourcing Network. Eric Dudas here, along with FCH co-host and honorary lifetime Texan, Mr. Brian Musker. Thanks for clicking in today. This is episode 28, and we're publishing on July 14th, 2011.
Hi, y'all. That's my little Texan, but okay. It's great to be back with you.
Yes, it is, and we were away for a week, and with the summer schedule, it seems like forever since we've put an episode out, but here we are.
Yeah, and some of you will be really glad to hear that we've actually made it through our fishing trip this year without having to replace the lower unit on the boat.
You mean some people were hoping we'd actually smash up again this year?
Actually, I hope not. But, as the water level in the lake goes up and down, then things change a bit, and, a rock that was sticking out 6 inches last year is under the water 6 inches the next year. But I'm sure that marinas up there depend on a certain amount of business of this type, okay?
Well, you're right about that, I'm sure. But your excellent navigation skills, despite the lower water, got us through the gauntlet of the Canadian Shield for another year, and here we are.
Yes, you might say excellent navigation skills despite our GPS that was really only off by 100 yards this year.
As we all heard your feelings on the GPS system.
Right. There's no hammer big enough for me.
Well, folks, there are big headlines in the news, both inside the fastener industry and just about everywhere you look, including, most ominously, from Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's been really quite blustery in the nation's capital as this thing about the debt ceiling's heated up.
Very true. That would be one word for it, yes. It would have been easy for us to make the deficit spending issue the theme of today's show, but we decided to go with wind. And on today's feature segment, we'll talk with CEO of Dokka Fasteners, Mr. Marc Strandquist. Dokka is a new Worth operation, and they're focusing on the wind energy sector. And we'll hear Marc describe Dokka's position and also his take on the wind energy market. Next, we'll talk with Rob Lucas of Fidelis Fasteners. He's back from yet another visit to China with an update on conditions there, and also his observations on the domestic market, the aftermath of the Heads and Threads deal, and developments with the global fastener network. There's always a strong audience when Rob's on the show, and this is another insightful conversation you won't want to miss. Just ahead of that, we'll hear from BB&T Capital Markets analyst Holden Lewis with his snapshot of the industrial markets. We also get his take on wind energy from among the companies he studies. And leading it all off, from Fastener Technology International magazine, is Mr. Mike McNulty with his Fastener News Report. His lead story this episode is the situation at Cardinal Fastener, which, as many of you know, has been heavily focused on the wind engine market. He'll bring us up to speed on that, as well as all of the other breaking news headlines. So, it's a gale force episode if ever there was one. What do you think, Bray?
How do we continue to do it?
Well, certainly not by tilting at windmills, that's for sure.
That's true.
Before we get too much farther, let's remind everybody that we'd be glad to hear from you anytime, and you can reach us at the email address ftr@fullythreaded.com. Also, get on our Facebook page, that's the Fully Threaded Facebook page, and leave us some info there. Appreciate all of you who loaded up your fastener dog pictures. Those are always still welcome. And we're on Twitter. Our handle is Fully Threaded. More and more fastener companies seems like are jumping on, so follow us. We'll follow you right back. And lastly, make sure to subscribe to Fully Threaded podcasts, and you can do that through iTunes, or if you have a BlackBerry, you can do it through the BlackBerry system as well. And we're threatening to get a video on how to do that online at one of these days.
Right. The threat's becoming closer.
The to-do list never seems to get any shorter, that's the problem.
I know.
Hey, I noticed on Twitter there's a handle out there, an account somebody's using. It's called Threadless, and it's a T-shirt company from Chicago.
Okay.
It's like the complete polar opposite from Fully Threaded.
Right. Okay.
I'm not encouraging anyone to go out there, mind you, but it's a T-shirt company, and it's called Threadless.
Wow, that's actually not a bad little handle for them, actually.
Well, I guess it beats shirtless.
Yeah, right. Shirtless in Chicago. You actually could, at this weather, you could actually be like that. But we'll wait.
Yeah, in between windstorms.
Yeah, I know, right. Yeah, the whole blustery thing, not only is it Washington, D.C., the bluster there is actually just the politicians. Here it's the wind blowing bloody trees down.
Hey, everybody. We are the guys who bring you FastenersClearinghouse.com. We're an online network for fasteners, and we hope you're taking advantage of it. Your team is anytime the need arises. You can get out there and at no charge search our database, which is, about 600,000 line items these days. On the other side of that coin, we'd be thrilled to have you listing your inventory up there. All the information is right on the website, and we're easy to contact. You can do that through the website. We'll talk to you anytime.
It's very painless, okay?
Yes, it's been described as a very pleasurable experience, I've heard.
Okay, we won't go any further there.
Well, I get pleasure out of it.
Good. All right.
And Brian, you are the guru of the FCH database, and have you made any tweaks lately that listeners ought to know about?
Well, yeah, we've made a few. I mean, we sort of continuously update the way that emails show and the information they contain and sort of the people they go to. I've made another couple of changes to an experimental interface for iPhones for people who want to be able to use Fasteners Clearinghouse on an iPhone. It's not quite ready for prime time yet. And we've been doing a little bit of work on an experimental search, which will probably go into the members area. It's pretty interesting. It's based on complete free format typing, a little bit like you do in Google. And the scrubber works out what you were really looking for, so you don't have to select any drop-downs. Just type it in.
Oh, that's going to be cool.
Nearly ready for prime time. Not quite yet, okay? But that'll be going into our members area, right?
Well, I'll be sure to get a news release out on the FCH page when that's ready. I know a lot of people have been asking for that for a while, so good work, my friend, and we'll keep everybody updated on the next episode.
Right.
Hey, did you see this announcement that came up? The whole internet is abuzz about Netflix raising their rates. Everybody's pissed off.
Right. And I've heard a number of reports. Actually, the increase is sort of pretty substantial, isn't it? 60%.
Right.
And, the view is that, well, a lot of these people who just sort of let it all float, because it was easier to leave it going, might change their minds. However, I don't think that'll happen. I think people just keep their membership.
Well, one of the funny things that I saw was a web page that was put up by Redbox basically saying, "Thank you, Netflix," but you forgot to include a map to the nearest Redbox.
Right. And I have used that. I mean, it's amazing how that thing works, I have to say. You have to be only wanting to get the latest releases of movies, but the fact is, it's really easy to just push a button and put your credit card in and then get a movie out and, take it back, and it's a really amazing service. Now, you happen to be a Netflix person, I know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I created this account a couple of years ago, and I'm like a lot of people. I've got this thing running for $9.99 a month, and some months I don't watch anything. I don't rent any DVDs. I'm lucky if I do 2 or 3 a whole year, but it's just so cheap. You just let it ride, and it's always available. I have to say, their streaming service is really, really good, and I know that's how they've really chipped away, or I guess it's beyond chipped away. I mean, they destroyed Blockbuster, and Redbox has chipped away from Blockbuster too, but I never really saw them as competing as directly with Netflix because they just have those few current movies, and that, of course, is chipping right into Blockbuster's market.
Right. I mean, it's my view that they compete with Blockbuster much more than Netflix. I mean, Netflix requires a bit of planning because you have to sort of work out in advance what you want to see. The Redbox is, the instant gratification thing where you just happen to be in your local Jewel or something like that and decide you want to get a movie for that night, and that's what it can do for you.
Right. And ever since Redbox came along, the parking right outside the doors of all the supermarkets, it's terrible. You go there on a Friday or Saturday night, you can't even think about parking right outside of the Jewel. Forget it, man.
Right, because it's all the soccer mums, their kids busily trying to work out which movie to rent.
Well, yeah, you probably have that demographic, and then as well, you've also got the the young date nighters, like the ones who can't get into bars yet. They're standing there waiting in line, looking for the latest releases. It's a pretty interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, I know. It really was thought out really, really well, that whole system.
Well, it's a limited time market. I mean, pretty soon streaming is going to take all this away, and I fully expect to see that in the next couple of years.
True.
Yeah, and on the subject of movies, Vicki Lester from the Pac West Fastener Association put together one of these extra normal movies to promote their fall conference coming up. Did you see this?
I did, but you should explain it to the users. What is an extra normal movie?
Right. It's a really cool service that you can use to type in your own script, and then these computer-generated voices actually act out whatever it is that you typed in. And we've actually used a couple of these on Fully Threaded at various times. It's really pretty cool. But if you go to the pac-west.org website, you can see, strangely, I've been included as I will be moderating a panel discussion at the fall meeting for Pac West, which, by the way, is taking place September 15th through the 17th, and that's out in Denver. And, so it's pretty cool.
So it's good. Vicky's right into the new technology. I mean, when we were at Pac West last year, she was tweeting away the scores, so this is just another little step up.
Yep, she's dialed in. Oh, and speaking of Twitter, I saw the NFDA actually has jumped on Twitter a little more aggressively lately, and the headline of the release that came out on July 12th is a little bit of a kind of an anticlimax, I guess, but headline, NFDA to discontinue international membership. Did you see this?
Oh, I did not see that.
Yeah.
So this is interesting.
It starts off, the National Fastener Distributors Association Board of Directors has unanimously agreed to discontinue the recruitment and inclusion of international fastener distributors as NFDA members. This reverses a decision made in 2009 to accept international members into the organization.
Well, that would be a sign they were listening to their members, because from the people we talked to, there was a serious undercurrent, within NFDA members that they wanted this to be national, meaning United States or Canada, not necessarily meaning Asia.
Right. Well, we had Jim Derry, the previous president of the NFDA, on a few episodes ago, and I think he did a pretty good job of explaining that whole reversal and I guess foreshadowed this announcement. But it came out, I saw it via Twitter, and that was back on July 12th. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the fastener industry is leveraging new technology with the extra normal movies, Twitter, Facebook, so good to see.
Yeah.
And I know another guy who's using modern technology, including Skype, and that's how he gets his reports over to us. And here he is now, Mike McNulty with the Fastener News Report.
Thanks, Eric, and greetings to all the fully threaded radio listeners out there. This is Mike McNulty with the Fastener News Report, brought to you by Fastener Technology International, your print and digital magazine for the fastener industry. I'm back in Ohio in my traditional recording spot to bring you the latest fastener industry news. Like most people, I am now enjoying the summer weather sweeping across the heart of the fastener industry, even though the Cleveland Indians have just slipped out of first place in the AL Central Division. The good news, Eric, is that the Indians are in the weakest division of Major League Baseball, and I am still focused on the fastener industry. Okay, Eric, our lead story today is the bankruptcy filing made by Cardinal Fastener on June 30th. Local sources here reported that Cardinal Fastener and Specialty Company of Bedford Heights, Ohio, voluntarily filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection from its creditors in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Cleveland, Ohio. The list of unsecured creditors included individuals and corporations. Companies listed in the filing include Chicago-based Crayer Steel and locally based companies Pro Metals, MT Heat Treating, Ernest Machine Products, and Juergens Industrial Supply. Amounts owed to these companies range from $30,000 to nearly $250,000. Company President John Grabner said that the filing was largely a result of an impasse in negotiations with Wells Fargo, Cardinal's primary lender for working capital financing. Cardinal now owes the bank just over $1 million, according to bankruptcy documents. A few days prior to the filing, Jeff Grabner, vice president and head of the company's wind business, said that Cardinal had been losing business to foreign parts makers who had underbid Cardinal, and that the company had recently reduced its workforce from 65 people a year ago to about 50 people this year. Cardinal makes large-diameter hot-forged bolts for several industries, including wind power, mining, oil and gas, and construction. In 2007, Cardinal started making bolts for use in wind turbines, which was the beginning of the company's investment of time and resources into the wind power industry. Cardinal received national press coverage when then President-elect Barack Obama toured the company in early 2009, and he cited it as an iconic company that was taking advantage of growth in the renewable wind energy industry, which was benefiting from policies in Washington designed to stimulate the economy and promote the development of alternative energy. In 2010, Cardinal was awarded a $480,000 tax credit as part of the Recovery Act Advanced Energy Manufacturing Tax Credits announced by President Obama. Also in 2010, John Grabner met with U.S. Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner and Energy Secretary Stephen Chu to discuss the importance of renewable energy tax credits for wind power projects, which were recently extended through the end of 2011. Earlier this year, Grabner was selected to participate in President Obama's Winning the Future Forum on Small Business held in Cleveland. We asked Reshoring Initiative founder Harry Mosier if he had any insights onto what went wrong at Cardinal, and he provided his gut reaction in the following 4 points. Number 1, Cardinal's customers are buying on price instead of total cost of ownership. Number 2, components for the wind industry are well known to be purchased at lower margins than on comparable components for other industries. Number 3, the wind market is volatile and not market-driven. Since the return on investment on a wind turbine is so low, wind farms rarely can proceed on their own. The required government funding goes up and down. Number 4, generally other shops are doing well to very well. PMI index was up in June. Mosier's conclusion is that the problem is probably with wind in general and Cardinal in particular. Cardinal says that it plans to emerge from Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection and remain a significant supplier of bolts to the wind industry, but it will probably do so with a new owner or a new major investor. Since the bankruptcy filing, several possible buyers and or investors have expressed interest in Cardinal, including a German company that has already visited Cardinal on July 7th. This unidentified company may serve as the so-called stalking horse to help set the purchase price. Grabner says that his first choice is to recapitalize the company rather than to sell it. After a short stint of suspended operations, Cardinal is now back up and running with about 20 employees. This was after consulting with Wells Fargo, which had originally frozen the Cardinal line of credit and its access to accounts due to violations of loan agreements that were recorded in June. Details on the financial troubles, including discussion of accounting errors, can be found in the Cardinal stories located online at cranescleveland.com. In its bankruptcy filing, Cardinal said that after the visit from President Obama in 2009, Cardinal became a national face for American manufacturing and growth. Time will only tell if it can get back to that position. Now let's move on to our Fastener Newsmaker highlights. Private equity firm Genstar Capital, LLC, has acquired MW Industries, Incorporated, a manufacturer of springs, specialty fasteners, and other precision components. MW supplies over 40,000 products to more than 23,000 customers. Terms were not disclosed. Carpenter Technology Corporation has acquired Latrobe Specialty Metals in a transaction valued at nearly $560 million. Latrobe and Carpenter supply materials used in several industries, including fasteners and precision form parts. Industrial distributor Lawson Products was awarded a 3-year contract to supply all of the Utah Transit Authority's fastener needs, including 2,500 different parts such as bolts, hex head cap screws, miniature fasteners, nuts, screws, socket products, and washers for ongoing train track, railcar, and bus maintenance. 6 months in after receiving an $875,000 tax credit from the state of Michigan, Acument Global Technologies said that it passed its hiring goal by adding 88 new employees. The producer of fastener products is in the middle of plans to invest over $5 million to expand its facilities in various Michigan locations. Precision Cast Parts Corporation has agreed to acquire Primus International for $900 million in cash. Primus supplies complex solutions and assemblies to the aerospace industry, including swaged rods, advanced composites, and machined aluminum and titanium components. The German-American Chamber of Commerce has announced that the privately owned company, the Worth Group, located in Minneapolis, Minnesota, is the 50th biggest German company in the United States. In 2007, the company recorded North American distribution sales of nearly $800 million in fasteners and assembly products, a value 12% higher than the previous year. Bay Fastening Systems has hired Michael Eichinger to fill the newly created position of Vice President Chief Operating Officer. Eichinger is responsible for charting the course for continued growth across all of the business segments, including fasteners, rivets, tools, and service. Rock Farm Carbide Manufacturing recently began operation of a new press and sinter department at its Rockford, Illinois facility. The new operation marks the beginning of in-house start-to-finish production of rough cord carbide tooling blanks for the fastener and cold forming industry. Scientific Forming Technologies Corporation and Marquette University have teamed up to offer a workshop titled Process Modeling from Metal Forming Die Stress Analysis to be held August 24th and 25th at Marquette University. Visit dform.com or marquette.edu for details. Our last newsmaker highlight is that the National Industrial Fastener and Mill Supply Expo, being held October 19th to 21st at the Sands Expo and Convention Center in Las Vegas, Nevada, will kick off this year with a free breakfast panel discussion program called The State of the U.S. Fastener Industry, Today and Into the Future. The panelists are Jim Sullivan of Chicago Hardware and Fixture Company, Mike Smith of Smith Associates, Jim Watuki of Nucor Fastener Division, and Jeff Connor of the Boulder Company. Finally, let's turn to the back page of this report where I present a personal interest story and some editorial comments. This week, the subject is debt and spending reduction. Our political leaders are supposedly working around the clock to figure out how to keep the USA government from shutting down. They are throwing around trillions of dollars worth of spending reduction, tax increases, and debt levels. People are acting serious about other people's money, but the joke is probably on us. As Larry Kudlow points out in a recent column, the budgetary game is a big taxpayer scam because the federal government spending level never goes down. Ever. Both the Democratic budget from President Obama and the Republican budget from Representative Ryan plan for overall spending increases through the year 2021. The only difference is that Ryan's is several $trillion lower than Obama's. But make no mistake, both plans show annual increases in government spending. Why is this so? It is because of the sophisticated, or should I say sneaky ways of using budget formulas and spending terminology in the alternative universe of Washington, D.C. For example, when a politician says they're cutting spending, they're actually referring to reducing the growth of spending or making the increases smaller than before. Another trick is putting reductions in the late years of a 10-year budget plan, which will get changed before we ever arrive at the point of making the reductions. There are also built-in increases for inflation and population changes, which are always estimated on the rise. When you or I or an actual company have to cut spending, we actually cut something out even if it hurts. It is just common sense. Instead, with the government, we have phony arguments about where to reduce future spending increases while we demonize oil companies, owners of jets, high earners, or anyone who champions fiscal restraint. Our government should be getting smaller, as we know that private groups can do just about everything better than the public sector can. The only way to make that happen is to reduce the flow of money. So when the debt deal is made, look past the headlines. Unfortunately, I doubt that there will be any real spending or debt reductions in the year 2011. This has been Mike McNulty of Fastener Technology International, bringing you the Fastener News Report. Visit fastenertech.com to learn more about the fastener industry and send your news, comments, corrections, or complaints to me at mcnulty@fastenertech.com.
It's fully threaded. Stick around.
FastenersClearinghouse.com. Search and source from over 500,000 line items, all just a mouse click away and available at no charge. When the need arises, you won't find a better place to locate hard-to-find fastener inventory. It's where you need to be.
This is Joe Truckee of Cardinal Fasteners, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for us.
This is Robert Wanzer, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for American Imperial.
This is Andy Pell from ScrewCrew.com, and FCH works for the fastener industry.
Join the sourcing network now and show your inventory to a whole new market. Turn slow movers into cash. List up to 10,000 line items. Show them to distributors only or to the world. FastenersClearinghouse.com. It's where you need to be.
Are you going to the Pac West Conference in Denver?
I'm not sure.
There will be lots of good education.
Like what?
A panel on domestic fastener manufacturing moderated by Eric Dudas from Fully Threaded Radio.
What else?
A program on social media marketing.
What else?
A class on fastener plating and coating taught by Brian Christensen from South Holland Metal Finishing.
What else?
A tabletop show with 20 exhibitors.
What else?
They have a party room at the Rockies vs. Giants baseball game Saturday night.
Tell me more.
It all happens September 15th through 17th at the Sheraton downtown in Denver.
How can I learn more?
Visit www.pac-west.org or call 714-484-4747.
I'd be nuts to miss the Pac West Conference in Denver. Let's go.
This is Chris from Hudson Fasteners, Fastener News at Twitter, and Fascinating Domains. And you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Holden Lewis is a market analyst with BB&T Capital Markets, focusing on manufacturing and industrial distribution. He's also a regular contributor on Fully Threaded Radio, and he joins us now from BB&T headquarters in Richmond, Virginia. Good to have you with us again, Holden.
Good to be here again, Eric. Thanks for asking me.
Say, before we dive into the conversation, I'd like to point out that you are the co-author of a weekly newsletter, which was recently renamed the Weekly Widget. It's a news digest you produce along with several of your colleagues that presents current industrial trends and statistical information on a weekly basis. FCH members will find an archive of this publication in the members area when they log into FCH, and everyone is welcome to sign up on the Fully Threaded homepage. Just click on the BB&T Capital Markets logo and enter your information.
Thank you very much for that. And yeah, I should mention that a lot of the stuff that we talk about, Eric, on this program, things like the ISM index and industrial production, a lot of those things that I reference when discussing sort of macro conditions that we're seeing and things of that sort, we do provide regular updates when the data comes out in that piece. So if there's anything that your listeners hear that's interesting from here, a lot of it is kept up more regularly in that piece, and your listeners can access it that way.
Well, it's well worth the time. Turning now to the markets, we spoke recently about commodity prices and their influence on industrial activity, and I'm guessing that's going to play into your summary of current conditions.
It certainly could, and I guess with respect to raw materials and pricing and that sort of thing at this point, I guess I would look at the current environment as perhaps being the better of both worlds. And the reason I say that is because commodity prices are still generally pretty high. Your listeners no doubt know that, are grappling with that, but at the same token, I would say that they have generally flattened out at these high levels in recent months, and that's true across a broad range of different materials, whether it be scrap steel, whether it be oil, whether it be copper. If you look at the price charts of a lot of these commodities at this point, yes, they're at high levels, but the better news is that they really haven't moved much since they spiked up to the current levels back in sort of the January, February, March time frame. And so, I think the reason I call that the better of both worlds is because these raw material costs are still high, activity has still continued. Again, to the extent that copper is high, oil is high, that spurs all kinds of activity in the mining and the energy field, and that has continued because those raw materials are still high. But at the same time, because you've had several months of stability at this point in these costs, it's allowed a lot of companies to really catch up with those costs in terms of their pricing strategies. And so I feel as though the margin pressure right now that has been certainly was a feature of the landscape in Q1 feels like a lot of that margin pressure has begun to ease, and that will probably feel to be more the case in the second half of this year. Now, there are some exceptions. No doubt some of your ears will say, yeah, but, that's not happening to me here. Stuff such as SBQ steel or tungsten, there are certainly some exceptions on some specialty commodities. But again, broadly, I would say that the commodity prices are high but now stable. And ultimately, I think stability is key. And so, earlier in the year, people loved the demand that was coming with an ISM reading that was north of 60. But they panicked over the inflation, and that was a big storyline for Q1. Now, in recent months, they've actually been panicking because of the fact that the ISM has dropped below 60 and is now sort of in the mid-50 range. But they're sort of ignoring the fact that because you've had that moderation in the ISM, you're also having some moderation in the inflation rate. And, the investors can be pretty fickle, can be pretty short-term oriented, but when the smoke clears on this, it just wouldn't surprise us if we're in an environment where the ISM readings are between 52 and 55, which is very pro-growth, and, inflation has really sort of moderated and would be considered more mild than anything else. And we might be setting into that type of environment. We'll have to see how the coming months come in, but to me, I think that the outlook remains pretty positive for the industrial world.
Interesting comments there about the inflation. I was not aware of that. Can you zero in for a moment on what you're seeing as the current pricing climate, and also a little bit on how that might be impacting margins?
Sure, I'd be glad to. As you can imagine, if the raw materials have begun to moderate in terms of pace of increase, then frankly some of the impetus to raise prices by the companies has also begun to moderate. And again, that's very different from what we saw in Q1. In Q1, really I'd say through April, companies are frantically putting through price increases. We have companies that have put in 2 or 3 price increases between late last year and early this year in an effort to keep up with what at the time were surging raw materials. There's a number of good news pieces of good news here. The first is most of those price increases have generally been sticking. Whether you look at, welding companies or what have you, most of the price increases that we've seen going through have been sticking. They've been getting them into the market through their distributors, et cetera. And so as you have seen the raw materials start to stabilize, what you're seeing is that companies which were behind the ball in Q1 are beginning to catch up in Q2. And I think as you go into Q3, Q4, I suspect that there'll be the ability to certainly fully offset the recent increase in raw materials. And, knowing how distributors tend to work, there might be some ability to get a little bit on top of that. And so that's the benefit to what we've seen in terms of the stability. In terms of the order of magnitude of pricing, what we're consistently seeing is that whether it's, like I said, welding or bearings or motors or other generally manufactured industrial components, you're seeing price increases that range from low single digits, call it 2, 3, 4%, to mid single digits, 4 to 6%. And I would say, again, of the manufactured products, that seems to be kind of the normal range. What we have seen is we have seen those increases in price begin to taper off as we've entered into May and June. And so I think the environment that sits today is, because the raw materials are stable, the pricing has stabilized. I think that the companies which have been raising price can sort of look forward to a more stable environment where they can catch up, and that seems to be the environment that we're in. So price cost was a problem in Q1, will be less of a problem in Q2 in all likelihood. And by the time we get into the second half, barring another surge in raw materials, I would say that companies at this point should have been able to catch up to the raw material increases that they experienced in the prior half of the year.
Well, that actually sounds pretty positive. Let's shift now to another timely issue. And on today's show, we're discussing several issues related to wind energy. Taking into account that your focus is fairly broad, what's your read of the significance of wind energy among some of the companies you monitor?
Sure, and unfortunately here I'm not sure that we can be so positive about what we're seeing. It's hard finding many sectors of the industrial world right now that are doing poorly, but wind would certainly be one of those exceptions. I do cover several companies that have varying degrees of exposure, whether that be a Lincoln Electric, which sells welding materials into the manufacturer. I also cover a company called Kadon, who manufactures bearings that goes into the turbine. So we certainly do have some exposure there, and the overall environment is reasonably weak at this point. Demand is poor. And I'll tell you, earlier on, I'm not sure I gave this the full credit that it should have gotten, but what seems to be holding the wind market back is simply that there is no long-term financial framework that investors can plan on to continue to invest in these sort of long-cycle, long-tail types of projects. And so you've had a lot of good things happen for wind. You've had the inventory glut that formed in 09 and 10 sort of get whittled away. Financing has gotten easier in terms of accessing capital, but what you have not had is simply a longer-term financial framework that can lend confidence to people making investments in that business. And if that doesn't exist, people are concerned that you're going to go back to these every other year boom-bust types of legislation, and that just it's not a conducive environment for demand in North American wind. The result of this extended period of weak demand is that you're also seeing pricing pressure on the landscape now for the components. That pressure obviously is starting at the turbine, and it's just filtering its way down to those that supply the turbine manufacturers. So, it's a very difficult environment. Unless that long-term financial framework begins to gel, I'm not sure that anybody I speak to sees that changing. And unfortunately, there's really no framework that we see coming out anytime in the near term. The good news, if we can pass it as that, is that the turbine OEMs and developers that I speak to, they're basically suggesting that the market has bottomed out, but they're just looking at it as kind of a plus or minus 5% type of market every year. And as they told me, I could just kind of model that as far out as my models go. And so they're just looking for a flat market that certainly goes into the foreseeable horizon. So for folks who are involved in this, I would say there's really no upside to having heavy exposure in wind. I don't think that there's a white knight coming out anytime in the near term that one should be waiting for. If wind is a disproportionate part of your mix, it's probably going to be an environment of stability rather than growth, and diversifying that would probably be wise. I know that a lot of folks that make components are able to sell those large, heavily engineered components into other areas such as heavy-duty machinery, and certainly I think that companies I deal with are, and other companies should be, looking at alternative markets. The only exception I would say is if you get out of the U.S., the wind market's not bad, and certainly we can reference China. Europe has always been a good wind market, but one which is perhaps a little bit closer to home is Brazil. My understanding from some of the OEMs I've talked to is that Brazil has really become the hot market where wind is concerned, and if there's some way to extend one's reach south of the border into Brazil, it seems like that's an area where there's a lot of opportunity. But North America itself looks like it's poised to be sluggish for some time.
Well, if it's one thing that business likes, it's stability and certainty, and we don't have a lot of that, I understand entirely. And speaking of that, we have numerous fiscal and budgetary issues looming in Washington at this very moment. What should fully threaded listeners be watching for as the third quarter unfolds, Holden?
Well, certainly keep track of a lot of those budgetary concerns. They've been there for a while, and I frankly, I think the potential impact of a default if the debt cap agreement isn't reached is probably beyond my pay grade. But I will say that I've long believed that this industrial market that we're all benefiting from here is driven first and foremost by the emerging markets and the strength that you're seeing there. I have every reason to believe that the Q2 earnings, which we're about to see unveil in coming weeks, are going to be good ones. We've seen MSC Industrial report earnings. Those were good earnings. We've seen Lindsay Manufacturing blow their numbers out. And so, again, in Q2 11, I think you're going to see some good earnings. I think the tone that they're going to establish going into Q3 is going to be one of things are still pretty good for us. And I'll go back to what I alluded to earlier in the call. Listeners should be looking at those ISM indices. They come out the first of every month, at least the national one does. There's a bunch of geographic ones, but that national ISM index that comes out the first of the month is the best leading indicator that we have for the manufacturing sector in any region. They have a U.S. one, they have a Chinese one, they have a Eurozone one. Those ISMs are still in the low to mid 50 range globally. That's not to say there's not some things we need to watch. I think in the most recent reading in North America, there seemed to be some suggestion on the part of purchasing managers that things were going to slow down going forward. We saw that in their inventory responses. And then, of course, the Chinese ISM is perhaps lower than I'm comfortable with. So, I'm not saying there's not things we need to watch there, but by and large, the ISM readings are still in pro-growth mode, and that tells me that not only will Q2 be strong, but Q3 should be as well. And I think 2011 probably looks pretty solid based on what we're seeing right now. The question really is 2012, but there's just not a lot of red flags right now. On the legislative side, there is one thing I think that your listeners should be watching for, and they may already be attuned to it, but in all of these discussions about the budget, the specter of eliminating LIFO has come back up as one means of managing the issue. And of course, for anybody that reports on that accounting method, that could conceivably be a tax event, which would be viewed somewhat negatively. And time will tell. If that happens, it could result in good opportunities for companies who are in a better standing to maybe pick up some good businesses that simply can't handle the tax tab that might result from that. So it could be painful for some and an opportunity perhaps for some of the financially stronger players in the space. So no telling where that goes, but that's something that I think is of interest and should be of interest to inventory holders everywhere, particularly in the distribution world.
Well, that's why we have you on the show, because you're always coming up with observations like that. That was not on my radar at all. And Holden Lewis, you are an analyst for BB&T Capital Markets. Every time we have you on, we receive so much positive feedback, and we really do appreciate every time you join us. Thank you so much.
Eric, thank you. Have a great day.
On January 21st of this year, the Worth Group announced its first hot-forming fastener manufacturing facility in North America as it launched Dokka Fasteners, a state-of-the-art hot-forming fastener manufacturing facility located in Auburn Hills, Michigan. You can get details about Dokka at their website, www.dokkafasteners.com, and Dokka spelled D-O-K-K-A. The Worth Group is a global $10 billion company, and it says it will eventually invest over $20 million into the facility, which will feature robotic hot forming manufacturing of high-quality bolts from M24 through M72, as well as studs and threaded rod in sizes M16 through M80. These will be produced for the wind power, offshore, and construction markets. With us now to discuss the launch of Dokka Fasteners and the current business climate surrounding its markets is Dokka CEO and industry veteran Marc Strandquist. Thank you for being with us, Marc.
Good afternoon, Eric. Thank you.
You've been in the industry for many years. How did you come to become the CEO of Dokka?
Well, I joined the fastener industry in 1986 when I joined Rockford Products as a inside sales trainee. And over the 5 years that I was with them, I've had a variety of sales positions. So as I built my career since then, I got involved with not only with sales, but with manufacturing and distribution operations positions, and was with the Worth Group from 2001 to 2007. And when this project came to fruition, they reached back out to me, and we had a discussion about the project, and I took it on. So I'm very excited to be part of it, and it's been a fun last year as we started this thing and gone through all the different steps.
Well, you and Worth are very bullish on wind energy, as evidenced by your investment. Can you explain your feelings about this?
Absolutely. The Worth Group has been around since 1945 and marched its way through a global expansion. It's ended up at around $10 billion this year. The company is very decentralized, and there's 400 different companies in the Worth Group's umbrella of corporations. And we're in over 80 different countries. Well, one of those countries is Norway. And in a town called Dokka was a company called Dokka Fasteners, and that company's been around for over 100 years. In 2008, as the Worth Group made a strategic decision to grow in Scandinavia, they purchased two different companies, Arvid Nielsen, which was purely a distribution company, but within the Arvid Nielsen group was the Dokka Fasteners. So the Worth Group quickly assessed the potential in the wind markets. Both those companies were very strong, one with the distribution of product to the wind power and the other one in the manufacturing. So in 2008 and 2009, the Worth Group invested a lot of capital in developing improved technologies, improved manufacturing processes, and was very successful to the point where there had to be some decisions on capacity and what to do. Should they add a lot of additional machinery there? Should they take and put a facility somewhere else in the globe? And so there was a debate about the U.S. versus China. But many of the European customers, where they had seen so much success, had made quite a commitment in the U.S., and so therefore the decision was to put this facility in the United States and take advantage of these companies coming to America to make their manufacturing locations successful in developing this market here. And so we decided to follow the group here.
How many domestic suppliers of wind components do you figure there are in the U.S. at this point?
Well, if you look at three critical components to a wind tower, you have studs, you have bolts, you have nuts and washers. So as you look at those manufacturers of all those components, I would say that today there's probably 12 to 15 people that are manufacturing products for the wind market. So that could be an individual that just makes washers, could be people that just make nuts, and again, the bolts and the studs coming out of nail-threaded fasteners manufacturers.
And what do you see as the primary competitive advantages that Dokka will be offering against, I guess, those companies as well as the foreign suppliers?
Well, when we went through the decision-making process, having been in the business for a long time, first we evaluated where would we find a skilled group of people to run the facility, both from a floor level and running the machinery, as well as people that were going to be in supervision and management positions. And since World War II, Rockford, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, Detroit, Michigan, and Cleveland. I don't know the exact percentage, but I would guess that 80% of the domestic industrial and automotive fastener manufacturing came out of those 4 cities. And so as we went through the process, we knew that if we wanted to go down south or out west or somewhere that didn't have a skilled labor force, that didn't have support companies such as heat treat suppliers, plating suppliers, people to buy tooling from, that we felt it was critical to pick one of those 4 cities. And so we put a competition last summer between the state of Michigan, the state of Indiana, the state of Illinois. We even included the state of Missouri because of low utility rates. And obviously put them in competition to see where the best tax incentives programs would be and the best training dollars. So we could take these employees, take them to the next level, and then provide ourselves a good competitive base to compete as your question referenced. So we did that, and Michigan won hands down. Everybody did a very nice job, the state of Illinois and Missouri and Indiana, but Michigan came up with a very enticing package. It had a real deep skilled labor pool, and so once we picked them in around Labor Day of last year, and then we picked the city, Auburn Hills, which is in Oakland County, by October 1st, and have had a lot of success. So with all the fastener manufacturers in town, we've been able to find people that have been laid off, and so we've been able to take people off the unemployment rolls, which is what the state of Michigan wants, and we're able to pick up people that know roll fit after heat treat. They know how to run sophisticated machinery, and they're at a high level of competency, and so that's really helped us. And so when you couple the human element, which we're most proud of, I think we've got an excellent team of people so far that we've been able to develop, and then you couple it with the process improvements that Norway had developed in terms of robots, in terms of automation, in terms of trying to take as much labor out of the process so that we can compete. We don't look at our domestic peers as much of a threat as we do the Asian suppliers and the risk of product coming out of China and Taiwan, and so we want to equalize ourselves in terms of that by reducing the labor cost as much as possible. So that's one of the key elements that we've had. Highly skilled people using the robots and using the automation, and obviously we want to just have a premium customer service and premium quality in terms of what we can provide to the customer base.
That's really interesting. Just the other day I was talking with American Fastener Journal publisher Mike McGuire, and he was pointing out that a lot of companies are expressing some frustration in getting skilled labor, particularly in areas that you would have been interested in. But what you discovered was that it was fairly plentiful in Michigan.
It is. I mean, one of the things that Michigan did that was different than the other states had excellent people at the city level. They had excellent people at county and at state, but they really weren't tied together in terms of how they presented their program to us in terms of trying to entice us to pick that location. What Michigan did different was they not only the city, the county, and the state were arm in arm in terms of presenting this to us, but what they did to attract us is they included, we're in Oakland County, so Oakland Community College. So that is a big program in terms of training, and whether it's something simple as forklift training. They also wrapped in the state of Michigan, there's a training institution that's state-sponsored called the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center, so MMTC. So we used MMTC for lean manufacturing. So everybody went through lean manufacturing, even if it's lean admin training, and spent probably close to $80,000 so far just on that with the individual employees and training and getting the various certifications. And, that was the one thing that we thought was, separated them from the other states and helped us as we brought people on. And then during the ups and downs of a startup, you have dead time, and then you have times that you're quite busy. So during the dead time, we've been able to really fill that with some excellent training and develop the people. And we've been very happy with the quality of the people that we've been able to get at every discipline.
That's really interesting. Getting back for a moment to advantages, how important is it in your area in your sector, that is, to have really fast turnaround times? I know these are large capital projects, so is that less important, or do you figure that still is a competitive advantage for you?
No, it certainly will be. Let's start at the very base of a fastener that's being manufactured. Our steel mill is Michigan, so it's a U.S.-made steel that we use. We're on I-75 up in Auburn Hills, and the steel mill's on I-75 down in the Monroe, Michigan area, so we're 63 miles away, we can get daily deliveries. So we have that opportunity to react quickly just in that. If we don't have it in stock, we have a steel mill supplier that I don't have to wait 2-3 days in order to get a truckload. They're an hour and a half away, and so that's a great opportunity for us. Again, in Michigan, when we have a customer, and this is happening a lot with us as a startup, because as each work center comes up and becomes productive, at that point, then customers really start to flood with quotations and opportunities. So, within the city of Detroit, there's a lot of tooling suppliers, or whether it's for our presses, whether it's for the CNC machines, whether it's for roll thread pieces of equipment, anything that we have great access to a very good supply base here to help us react and to move quickly. And then obviously we are making sure that we stock all the different sizes of tools, whether it's inch or metric, so that we can sit there and react ahead of time with this planning that we're ready to react and to respond to a customer. So, and with the robots, the way they're set up, what's nice is this process typically with hot forming, if you look in the old days, people had tongs, that operator would take a blank that's been sawed off from a piece of steel, heat it up with the tong, take the tong, and then put that part into the press, smash it, and drop it in a bucket. Then it might sit 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and then it would go to roll threading, and then it would go to this, and then it would go to that. And that was the traditional lead time. But within our process, we take, a human puts that bar of steel, and anywhere from 18 to 22 foot long bar of steel, puts it in a magazine or in a hopper, and then the automation takes over. And so for us, we can get a bolt complete, ready to go to heat treat in less than an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a matter of getting the tool set up and making sure you've got quick change philosophies. But once that bar of steel is put on that saw and it cuts it, the automation and the robots will put it through this whole work cell where it cuts the steel, chamfers it, puts it in the induction heater, puts it in a press, cools it off for a period of time, puts it in an extrusion machine, puts it in a roll threader, puts it in a chamfering machine in less than an hour. So that part's done, ready to go to heat treat in an hour. And so we think that's a competitive edge.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't see how it wouldn't be. In another subject, when you talk about the economics of wind energy, you can't avoid the subject of production tax credits, renewable portfolio standards, and other federal support. I know you've talked about some state and local support previously, and I also know that this is one of these really open-ended questions, but I'm going to let you tee off on it anyway. How do you see this landscape shifting over the next few years, and how do you see Dokka potentially being affected?
Well, I think you start with, we're probably 20, 25 years behind Europe in terms of the development and a serious commitment to wind power. The difference is, I think, that if you were to go 5, 8 years ago, the large wind power companies, Siemens and Vestas and Gamesa and people like that, would manufacture these wind turbines and the towers, etc., in Europe, and then they'd ship them over here. Well, the costs were so prohibitive, wind power didn't make sense at times. Yes, it was green, and yes, it was able to generate electricity, but the cost was really prohibitive. What's changed, irrespective of the government, and I like to use when I talk to people, the Henry Ford example. Before Henry Ford put that assembly line in, cars were only for rich people. No one else could afford them. But once he found a way to bring that cost point down, put them into an assembly process, everybody was able to get those. And then all of a sudden it made sense. And I think wind power is going to have the same example, that as all these European suppliers and U.S., brand new U.S. suppliers start to come up and manufacture here, and they don't manufacture in the U.S., that price point for buying a wind tower is going to drop. And so I'm hoping that the need for federal support and some of this stuff, we'll be able to wean ourselves off of that in the next 3 to 5 years and then be in a position where it'll be just like anything else. It's a viable opportunity to generate power. It's cost competitive. It makes a lot of sense. And so I think that's the biggest thing that's out there. The more the manufacturing base starts to generate all this product here, the cheaper it's going to be, the more people can buy it, the more volume's out there. Because anybody today, we certainly in our business plan put no faith in where the federal government would take this long term. And, we made sure any type of business plan that was generated never included, a dependence on that. Because I think we see, even today, where the president had originally been trying to push for $2 trillion in cuts, and now he's trying to get $4 trillion in cuts overall in the Medicare and a variety of other spending practices that they have, as well as the tax revenue. And if you look at all these things, this is going to change every month. So if you try and plan your company, and because we plan on being here for a very long time to come, the Works Group has that tradition. So as we look at all that, we're just not going to depend on that. We're going to try and make sure that we provide high-quality products that the customers can count on, that we got excellent deliveries, premium customer service. One of our internal slogans is we sell security. When a customer comes to us, they know that the quality is going to be perfect, and if they ask for 10,000 pieces, that's what they're going to get. We sell security, and that the Works Group is a very, very financially stable company. You know, we have a Standard & Poor's rating that's A stable. So when a customer comes to us, they know that what they're getting. They know they're going to have a consistent, reliable, excellent supplier, and that's what we're going to depend on. Circling back to your question, we're not going to depend on the federal grants that are out there, and we're just going to count on this industry picking up. It's going to, you know, people talk about it being flat. It depends on who you talk to and where you're going. I mean, so is automotive. So every industry goes through cycles. So they go up and they go down, and then you know, hopefully what you get though is a perpetual growth cycle that over time there's a good solid base to it. But you know, if we talk to some of our customers that we're developing, you know, one in particular, it's one of what I call the big three. They're looking at anywhere from 25 to 40% growth next year. But there are other people that are not sure. And so when you have these people out there making some of the predictions, it's all guessing because you just don't know what the federal legislation is going to be out there, what they're going to be doing to support things that could really jumpstart it or because they could hurt it. And so that's the difficult part about trying to predict right now. For us, thankfully, as a startup, a year ago we had 0 sales. So for us, it's going to be, I'm very confident that there'll be several years of positive growth year over year as we go from being a startup into a fledgling company into a solid, consistent performer.
That's a very interesting way of looking at it. That's probably one of the great benefits of starting in a difficult economy.
Yeah.
Well, I know you've been working very long and very hard at that, and without a break. We were talking earlier, and I was interested to hear that after working this long on Dokka, you're going to take a few days off here shortly, and you're headed up to the Kenora, Ontario area to hunt for those big muskies. And Brian and I just returned from that very place, and boy, I wish I was heading up there with you.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's time to just take a week and recharge my batteries a little bit. But yeah, I'm going to go up there to the Lake of the Woods region, and it's an area I go to probably every couple of years, and go enjoy the lakes and the wilderness, and go after the very challenging muskie.
Now, let me ask you this: when you're throwing those top raters and bucktails, do you have any kind of a size fish you're shooting for? I mean, you have a goal that you're looking for?
Yeah, for me, I like to target over 40. I've never caught one over 50 inches. So for me, that's one of my goals is to finally get one over 50 inches. I've had a 45-inch northern before, and I've had actually a 44-inch muskie. But you know, my goal is to always try and get out there, and those lakes are more than capable of generating that type of fish. So,
oh, you better believe it.
Yeah, you know, muskie fishing, you can go 3 days and not catch a one, and that's the challenge of it. It's a very difficult and temperamental fish to successfully land. So that's for me, it gives focus. And you got to pick the baits, you got to pick the depths, you got to pick, you know, windy points with sharp drop-offs. Those types of things are all things that you like to target, and depending on the temperature and everything else. So for me, it's fun to focus on the strategy of that versus the strategy of manufacturing and the strategy of the wind power market.
Gotcha. Well, you'll have a few days to decompress, that's for sure. And Marc Strandquist, you are the CEO of Dokka Fasteners, and folks can get more information about your company at the website www.dokkafasteners.com. That's spelled D-O-K-K-A fasteners.com. We sure do appreciate you joining us for this segment, and we wish you well up on the big lake.
Well, I sure appreciate it.
Up next on Fully Threaded, a conversation with Rob Lucas. Thanks for being with us, everyone.
There's one sure bet in the fastener industry, and it takes place every year in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is the American Fastener Journal publisher, Mike McGuire, inviting you to this year's National Industrial Fastener and Mill Supply Expo, happening October 19th to the 21st at the Sands Expo Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is the largest trade event of its kind in North America, endorsed by over 30 fastener industry and industrial organizations, featuring all types of industrial fasteners, electronic fasteners, and construction fasteners, manufacturing, packaging, and testing equipment, and much more. Distributors, manufacturers, importers, and reps from around the globe will be on hand and ready to do business. You do not want to miss out on this opportunity. You'll also want to attend one or several of the many conference programs, and this will all lead up to the legendary welcoming Expo Bash. See all the details at our website, www.fastenershows.com, and make your booth and travel arrangements today. The National Industrial Fastener and Mill Supply Expo, better known as the Vegas Show, is right around the corner. It's the one sure bet in the fastener industry, and I'll see you there.
This is Chris Sellery from Ford Fasteners. It's your source for 410 stainless steel screws. You're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Joining us now is frequent FTR contributor, Mr. Rob Lucas. Rob, welcome back to Fully Threaded.
Hey guys, frequent. I don't know if it's frequent. It's been rather infrequent lately. But good to talk to you guys. Hope all's well. I've been catching up to your podcasts on my iPod as I travel in planes for 13 hours bored silly. It's one of the great things that keeps me entertained.
Well, glad to hear that. You and it sounds like quite a few other road warriors these days.
Yeah, I really like that you can put it right on your iPod or your iPhone. That's, to me, invaluable, especially when you spend unwaking hours and waking hours driving or flying.
So you must listen to every episode multiple times then.
Yeah, that. I listen to a couple of them here and there. I try to pick up on some things. Well, I save them all if that adds credence to it. I probably have still all of the podcasts tied to my iPod, which should be deleted since it's taking up valuable space.
Right. Doesn't count. Sorry. You have to listen to them.
I'd say keep them there for archival purposes, and you never know. Well, I'll tell you, episode 20 was the last time we had you aboard, and that was in February. It was one of the most listened to episodes that we've had to date, and so we're glad you could join us. You have just come back from a couple of trips to Asia. Isn't that true?
That's right. Since when was that? February we talked to them? Yeah, it's 2 or 3 trips, I think.
Although I guess that's probably true anytime I would ask you that question, so I guess that's a safe one.
Well, I'm cutting down on my travel this year. It's not as robust as I did the last couple of years, but I'm still doing 6, 7, 8 pops a year over there, but no more 11s.
Oh, at 11 you'd have to ask them to leave all your stuff in the hotel room.
Yeah, it's just, it's price of airlines and the things I can get done. I've learned how to consolidate a little bit better. I've found other means to do things, and I've got some people on the ground there helping me out, so it's helped me to manage my time a little bit better and more efficiently. And I now combined, when customers go with me, I'll take multiple customers. So that also helps out in some of that downtime travel. It's a lot of travel, and it's pretty hard. It takes a toll on both, me physically and mentally, as well as, just keeping in the loop of what's going on from a business standpoint.
Do you find that dealing with mainly the Chinese, because that's where your main market, I guess, is it FaceTime required? Is it possible that you could use some of these newer web conferencing tools to actually achieve the same thing, or do they really require a handshake and look you in the face?
Well, I actually do use, your friend and mine, Skype, for a lot of that video conferencing where I talk to these guys, and I do a lot of that during the week. But I still think that it is very, very important for not only myself but customers to see these guys face to face, and it goes beyond just the face to face. You've put ground on Chinese soil. You've shown some real, I'm serious about doing business with you. It's not just a phone call from overseas where it may be a pig and a poke. I'm really investing some money here to make this thing grow. They recognize that.
Yeah,
I think it helps out.
Okay.
Well, what can you tell us about the climate over there these days? What's standing out in your mind?
Ooh, it's hot. The climate is very warm. It's July.
I didn't know you told jokes.
That's my attempt at levity.
We'll have no more of that on this episode.
Yeah, no gaiety, thank you.
They meaning China, is in an interesting situation. They're trying to cool their economy. They've got labor issues. They've got obviously some currency issues, same as it's been going for quite a long time. But I think the labor issue is the loudest one for them. And as these Chinese nationals who look for more money for the jobs they've had in the past, that creates some pains for them. Do they raise the price of their goods? Do they lower the cost of the RMB? Devalue the goods? How do they offset all this? And as this progresses, I'm sure we're going to hear more and more of it on the news. They've been relatively, they meaning the Chinese government, has been relatively good at keeping it quiet, but you still hear about it. That, along with they're doing the same thing this year that they did similar to last year with their blackouts, which is again typical. They've been doing this for years. It's just going to be on less of a notice for the factories to be advised of when they're going to be out of power. Those are probably the two most unique things. As far as costing goes, surprisingly, I had been looking at this Asian, not only China, but the whole globe from the Pacific Rim as to what was going to happen with costing. And based off of the problems in Brazil and Australia at the mines, all the way up to the mills, I was expecting to see some very, very large price increases, which still may happen. But to this point, they have not happened. And I don't know what to equate that to other than all the global economy just being very cool. Nobody is doing a whole lot of spend, hence the reason they probably haven't tried to drive in increases like everyone expected. Now, there still also hasn't been a whole lot of noise about the Japanese rebuild. I don't know what you guys have heard, but there's not a whole lot of mention about, this influx of sheet steel and rebar that's going to be flushed into these places in Japan to rebuild it. Now, there's going to be some rebuild done, and more than likely China will have a great deal of that, but it hasn't quite impacted China and or the globe yet. And until those things do, I don't think we're going to see anything as far as massive, large cost increases, but I still expect them. I would imagine to see some costs continue to go up. I think we're past ever seeing anything go back down. And, in January, February, I would have thought prices would have gone up by 30% by the end of this year. And now I'm probably thinking it might be 15 to 20. But, so we're going to see more. It's just not going to be, I think, at this point, as high as I once thought it would be.
These factory mandated shutdowns, this is an attempt by the Chinese government really to slow the economy down. Is that the main point, or is there another motive?
Well, the other motive is just power. Their grids, they don't have the same grid systems we do, and they've got a whole lot of people. And most of this power outage is, surrounding the larger Shanghai, Beijing areas where lots of people are at. Yeah. So they try to offset this and give a fair and equal balance, if they want to call it that, power to each sector. And that's really what they tout. But what you're saying is more true. They're trying to cool things down. I don't see them shutting down power in hospitals, where people are on life support. They're doing it in manufacturing sectors. And typically in manufacturing sectors, it's the dirty business, pollutant business.
Yeah. So the problems you're describing in the labour market, how does that sort of manifest itself? Do the people just decide, I don't like this job anymore and walk off? Or do they have, is a collective bargaining going on to try and raise pay scales? What's really happening?
There was some noise when I was over in China in March, or may have been late February, where there was a group of employees at a factory in southern Ningbo and it was not a fastener related sector, but it was a manufacturing sector, and they were out basically picketing for more wages. And it was in the news there for about 5 minutes, and it vanished, because the government went down there with soldiers and made this go away. What they're looking at doing is, these employees who are working at a factory, they work for a couple of years, and some of them stay. A lot of them go back to the mainland, get farms, have families. There's an influx of new employees that come in. But the ones that are staying are recognizing that, hey, I've been here a while. I do a pretty good job, and you've taught me a lot of things, and I can take this experience and move on to another factory. And they'd appreciate me more than you would. So now you've got this kind of price bidding for some employees. And I think that's just a little bit of everyone over there is seeing the taste of cash. And it's trickling down now to the labor force who says, we also want a little bit more of it.
Well, it tastes good.
It tastes great.
Yeah, it's what the rest of the world's faced for the last 100 years.
Right. And I think that, they're wrestling with something, like you just said, the last 100 years, America's done this, everyone else has done this kind of a slow and steady learning curve. They're trying to catapult themselves into it, which means that they want to do things much, much faster. And that, of course, is going to cause them, I would think, bigger problems. They're going to take the impact of a lot of problems we had over 100 years and try to absorb them in a decade or maybe two.
Well, this is probably a pretty well-documented trend by this point. Do you see this coming to a head in any certain way in the near future, or are we just kind of expecting to see this trend continue for some unspecified amount of time? I mean,
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I know enough to know that every Chinese New Year there's a whole influx of new employees, and others go back, like I said before. It just seems to me that there are more people now that are staying and learning a trade and trying to get their taste of this now what I would call a capitalistic society. Capitalism is alive and well in China. And, I think they're trying to get a taste of it. So that's going to, I would assume, continue for some period of time. I don't think there's anything that's going to stop it unless the government does something to step in, which I don't know how they would do that. And I don't think it's going to be such a massive impact that it's going to be the crux of factories shutting down because their workforce is all done, collective bargaining. I don't think that's going to happen. I just think it's this minor pressure that's just a gnat in the ear of manufacturing.
Right.
I mentioned earlier that episode 20 was one of our hottest listened shows, and of course we were talking about what was still at that time pending with Heads and Threads. All that has really panned out in the interim, and I know that you had some involvement with some overseas suppliers working with the aftermath of that. Do you have any thoughts on that or any comments on what you've seen?
No, there's really not a whole lot to discuss other than the fact that, that the torch has been passed and Porteous has bought all their assets. And there is going to be some amount of this money that's going to be dispersed amongst these unsecured creditors. What that fund is or what that amount is to each one, I'm not sure a percentage. I don't think that's quite been disclosed yet. But they will the vendors will be receiving some compensation back on some portion of the orders that were taken and they shipped. I don't know what that percentage could be. It could be 1%. It could be nothing. There's going to be something. They're not nothing. It'll be something. I just don't know what the exact numbers will be yet. I don't think it's been determined yet due to the fact that I think Heads officially was done Friday of last week.
How does that all get adjudicated? Do you know?
I don't. I know enough to know that whomever the administrator of this is basically the one that takes all these funds. And that, of course, secured loans are paid off first. That's common sense. And there'll be some negotiation with whatever Heads and Threads had on leases and things that were, again, secured through the states. Once all that's finalized, whatever pool of money is left will then be divided up equally amongst the creditors. And that would include the unsecured. So therein lies the question of, I don't know what is owed to others other than the vendors and how that works. But I know enough to know that everybody will be getting something back. It won't be 100 cents on the dollar, but it could be 10, it could be 15. Who knows what it'll be?
Well, a lot of big changes in the fastener industry, that's for sure.
Indeed.
What are you seeing in the domestic market these days? You got any feel for that?
Well, I don't. It was a fairly, I don't want to say robust, but it was a decent first half of the year as opposed to the last couple of years. It was much, much better. June was a little slower from what I heard from a lot of the country. Not everybody, but a lot of people said that, their June wasn't as active as the last 5 months. I kind of saw the same thing. June did slow down not quite a bit, but it slowed down enough for everyone to recognize it. I recognize it from my business. It seems to have gotten a little bit better here the last week of June into July. I just don't know where that's coming. And of course, everyone knows that there's some deficit talks going on with our government, and everyone knows that there's some global economy problems. Greece has had their own issues and an extension on that. I think everyone's waiting to see what's going to happen here. We've got an election year coming up right around the corner, and everyone I think is just going to kind of sit tight, see what road we're going to take and where we're going to go, and sift through it. I think people are very, very conservative, both domestic and abroad, about how they spend their cash. Cash flow is king. Everybody is, I think, cash poor, or most of the country is relatively cash poor. There's always exception to that rule, but I don't think there's a whole lot of money that people have in reserves that they're just throwing around like they would have in 2006. It's certainly changed since then.
Yeah, a year ago now, we were talking about a similar scenario, and it was resulting in all kinds of holes in the supply chain. You see any glaring holes currently?
I don't. That was a big topic with, people had brought up to me, hey, Heads and Threads is going to go away, and they had some key segment parts that maybe the others won't have, and there'll be this window to be open. And, I just thought, I don't know if that's true, and I don't know if it's true today, but my thought was most of everybody, including Heads and Threads, had minimized the amount of inventory they had in the first place. So I think that impact had already been kind of passed along over the course of the last 18 months. So when it actually went away, there was no real vacuum for it.
Okay, interesting comment.
And I'm sure that the other importers have picked up business because of Heads going away. I mean, it's inevitable. I just don't know if it's an enormous amount of business that went their way. We all have an idea of why Heads went out of business. And it certainly wasn't because they were making money hand over fist. So that would tell me that their sales were down to some much lower level than they had been in the past, which means that's now divided up amongst a handful of those type of houses that remain. I don't know if there's a huge influx, of people that want Heads is closed, I have to run out to XYZ. I'm assuming that happened, but I don't think it happened to the amount of, just people flocking to them in desperation.
It'd be interesting to see what happens out on the West Coast, because there were 3 major importers. Now it's kind of down to 2, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's the 2 big guys too. And West Coast is much different than east of the Mississippi. It's basically the country is divided by that river, and on each side of it is really 2 different industries. It's heavy construction markets in the west and industrial on the east. And those 2 are probably going to battle out to see who can be the best amongst the 2 of them.
Well, all kinds of things for us to be watching. And, of course, we've all got some things on the horizon. You're going to be participating again at this year's Vegas show, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I have another presentation this year on the show floor. And the show's a little earlier. That's right around the corner, October. And I'm looking forward to that. It's always been a good thing for me to give these presentations. They're not infomercials on my businesses. It's just more of whatever the topic is what we discuss. And I kind of hope that people talk to me after that, and that's maybe where I can drum up some business for myself. But really, I'm doing it for the industry to help out people.
That's good. And remember the cables this year.
Yeah, I won't forget them this year.
Right.
Yeah, tip for all you young kids at home giving presentations: make sure you have the right cables for your laptop when you go to hook it up to the projector.
Right.
One would have thought that they would have had a Mac cable. Unfortunately, the one that would have thought that was me, and I was running around frantically.
Right.
Yeah, I used to work for a guy years and years ago when the slide projector was the staple tool of presentations, and he taught me very early on, never go to a presentation without 2 things in your pocket. One was an extra light bulb, and the other one was a quarter. And the reason you needed the light bulb was obvious. You needed the quarter because the quarter was like the perfect screwdriver for taking out a jammed carousel.
Yeah.
And over years, he'd learned that, and it's still hard for me to break that habit showing up, even though we don't use slide projectors anymore. I've always got a quarter. I don't know about the light bulb, but
yeah, I was going to ask you the next time I see you if you have a light bulb in your pocket. Are you happy to see me?
I'm always happy to see you, Rob.
I think that's not a light bulb then.
Not that way.
Well, so I think that it's going to be a decent Vegas show this year. I think the timing of it is a little better than it has been in the past. Not so close to the holidays. I kind of like it being in October. We'll see how it turns out. It's a new venue this year. I think it's down to Sands. So it's, a little different venue. We'll have to feel ourselves out and find out good locations to hang out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of jazzed about that. But the downside of it is those of us who were kind of prone to staying at some of the more, what shall we say, thrifty hotels are going to find it a little more difficult, as I understand it. It's a little bit of a project to get yourself to the Sands versus getting over to Mandalay.
Yeah, there's still some hotels that offer some thrifty advantages if need be. But, what I like about it is, quite frankly, I didn't mind the Mandalay, but it was such a long walk to that convention center. No matter where you stayed, even if you stayed at the Mandalay, it was, you had to walk 45 minutes to get to the actual show floor.
Yeah.
So I'm not opposed to a little bit of a walk. And I like the idea of it being someplace new and fresh. And it's a little different time, too.
Right. I think we're going to stay at the Sands this year and just kind of take our lumps. But I don't know. Maybe that's what we call progress.
Well, you got to do what you got to do. I might actually have to pitch a tent.
I mean, sleep in your booth, you mean?
Yeah, I might just knock on your door and ask if you got a free cot and lounge with you. I did want to talk to you guys a little bit about Fidelis and some things that are going on with both Fidelis and GFN, if you don't mind.
What have you got going?
Well, there's a couple of things, and Brian, you hit on a key subject that, to me, I've noticed more this year than I have in the past. And I don't know if that's because I'm getting more tentacles onto the market or if it's just becoming a trend. But, when you talk about relationships or seeing somebody, I basically sell to everybody. Relationship is key. You've got to have a relationship with your supply base in order to get the maximum return for whatever it is you're trying to do. And relationship truly means, knowing somebody somewhat intimately, knowing them a little bit better than just a phone call. And the reason for that is the trend I've been seeing. And this trend is I've had several customers in the last 12 months that were either non-customers of mine and became customers or were people that I was kind of courting to become customers who had done a little bit of Google work. They Googled some widget online, found somebody off of their website, placed an order, and then got themselves in some major hot water. And each of my last 3 trips to Asia, I have gone to assist these customers with both factories that have caused them some duress and helping them find new factories to get them out of the trouble they're in. And, I come back, and that's kind of helped me to grow my business because they see the benefit of that. And, that's a real key factor. Is just because, you found it on Google and they have a beautiful website doesn't make it so. Anybody can airbrush anything. You've seen pictures of me, that doesn't look anything like me.
Oh, I thought it was you.
No, I'm much more ugly in person.
Oh, okay.
You can do a lot of things with a website and with a couple of words to get people to go, hey, that's really slick. And then lo and behold, you find out that, that guy was a trading company, or that guy didn't have that. He had one machine. He was beating like a blacksmith. I've seen that a lot. And, that is the key to what Fidelis offers is, hey, relationship-based, knowing these guys, spending time over there. I'm not traveling over there just because I enjoy it. I'm doing this to try to build relationships and to grow that vendor base so that the customers have these avenues to go to. I think that's key to it. And, seeing factories and knowing enough about them to say, yes, that's a good factory, that's a bad factory, the ability to audit it, taking customers there, letting them, making that introduction, those kind of things are very, very important. And I've got some customers now who, if anybody's interested in, I can pass them along a name or a number and that you can contact them to find out, exactly what benefit I've given to them over these trips and or these calls for them. And the cost reductions that supplied them, me going to China and working for 5 people versus 5 people going themselves is a much different cost ratio.
Well, that's your stock and trade, and that's what it's really been since you started off with Fidelis.
Yeah.
And what about on the GFN side? I read a release that came out, when was it, a month or 2 back, that you guys had your first major buy come through?
Yeah, we did our first, the members did their first consolidated buy. We placed it overseas, and it was for nuts. We've done that. The parts are actually going to be shipped here in the next few weeks to multiple locations across the country. So that it's got some success behind it. It's got some traction behind it, and we've moved on to nuts or to bolts. And that's kind of a key element. If anybody's interested in getting in on the next purchase or the next offering that GFN does, I've broken it out now so that it's not a fee. It's kind of an a la carte. If you only want to get into the screw part of it, you can enter into that only category. You can pick the categories you'd like to enter and reap some benefits from that. And the next one coming up in 2 weeks is going to be a bolt buy. So the members have already supplied their information. We've got some quotes. We're working with a handful of vendors now to find out what makes the most sense for the members, and we're going to turn that PO loose and move on to the next category.
How do people get more information about this, Rob?
Well, contact me is obviously the best way. Or go to the Global Fastener Network website. That has some information on it and how to become a member. But I would say the best thing is just drop me an email at rlucas at Global Fastener Network or even Fidelis Fasteners, either one, and I'll answer it. And we're trying to grow this thing. I'm doing the best I can to make it accessible to almost anybody in the distribution chain. It's still no OEMs, no end users. And it's got some success. So I've set out to do what I tried to do, and it's been relatively successful. And I'm just going to keep pushing forward and move on to the next one. So I think that Fidelis and GFN that I've set up, I structured them both so that they kind of complemented each other, and they offer the customers of mine things that they need from either an a la carte standpoint or from an overall supply chain standpoint. and I'm happy with how they've been set up.
Well, from time to time during my time on the phones, I run into people and they'll say, oh, yeah, I just got back from a trip overseas and I was escorted by Rob Lucas, and he's very well respected and everything's going really well. So that's all really good feedback on what you're doing, Rob. Hey, you heading out back to the bush anytime soon, or what are your plans with that?
You mean as far as Asia?
Yeah, I guess with a world traveler like you, I should have been more clear. I was curious if you got any more trips up to the Great White North, hunting, fishing, and so forth.
No, I did one of those earlier. I won't do anything again until well into November. But I do have a couple more trips set up for Asia and one to India, as a matter of fact. So I'll be doing a little bit more traveling overseas before the year's end. And next year, my plan is to never travel again. I'm going to find one of you guys. Brian, you know enough about traveling. I'm just going to employ you and let you travel around for me.
Okay.
I don't think there's an end to travel in my sight.
Sure if I want that, actually.
Yeah, I don't think there's an end of it in sight for me for a while, but I kind of like it. And it's, to be really honest, it does get kind of taxing to go over there as much as I have been going over there. But the light of it is I really enjoy doing it because now I'm taking customers with me that have got some history with me. And I like watching their relationship and their business grow with the vendors that we're bringing to the table. To me, I get a kick out of that, and it's kind of neat to be a part of it and to really see someone's mindset change on the way they used to buy versus the way they're going to buy. And it takes time to do that, and nothing happens overnight, and there's always bumps in the road. But I've seen this firsthand, and I'm tickled by it every time. And the guys that go with me that have made this trek, a lot of them want to go do it again, and I'm surprised because I never want to do it again. But they're willing to go back. I go, that's fantastic. I must be doing something right, and it must be working. So that's what keeps me going, and I'm tickled by it.
Oh, that's cool.
That's very cool.
Well, again, people can contact you at email address rlucas@fidelisfasteners.com. The website there is www.fidelisfasteners.com. We're glad to hear from you again, and we'll see you in Vegas come October.
And hopefully I'll see you prior to that. We can do a little bit of summertime fishing, Brian and Eric.
Hey, you're on for that.
If not, I'll take you to the pet store. We can get some real good fish.
Thanks, Rob.
I might see you later.
See ya.
There's a little wind left in our sails. Stay with us. It's fully threaded.
This is Sue Rice with the FCH team. It's my job to make sure that as an FCH member, you receive the highest possible benefit from your participation in the network. Did you know that once you're logged into FCH, you have access to exclusive search tools, site statistics, and tracking information about your inventory and source finder inquiries? It's all just a click away, and I'm happy to walk you through it. If it's time to refresh your inventory, don't worry. We'll run your listings through our scrubber software and get you up and running in a very short time. If you can attach a spreadsheet to an email, you can list inventory on FCH. We can also show you how to optimize your listings to attract the most hits for your type of fastener. Send email to sue@fastenersclearinghouse.com and let me help you get the most from the FCH sourcing network. I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Hi, this is Hugh Hewitt for the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund, www.semperfifund.org. Over the past 7 years, twice a year, the wonderful people who operate the Semper Fi Fund and many amazing Marines who have been the beneficiaries of the charities that have supported the Semper Fi Fund, including many thousands of individual donors, have come into my radio studio to tell their amazing stories of serving their country, of being wounded, and how the Semper Fi Fund has helped them make that transition back to recovery. Unfortunately, Bethesda and Walter Reed are full again. Fund. More and more men and women are coming back from the war injured, sometimes awfully so. We need the Semper Fi Fund to be there for these Marines and those soldiers, sailors, and airmen who served alongside of them. Please consider a gift to the Semper Fi Fund. Very low overhead, extraordinary capacity to get money where it needs to get in a hurry, and great management, including some of the senior Marines who've ever served under the flag. When you're looking for something to do that will make an impact, please check out the Semper Fi Fund. That's www.semperfifund.org, www.semperfifund.org.
This is Rick Porter with Mid-Valley Distributors, the largest stocking distributor of fasteners in Central California. If we don't have it, weld it. You're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Brian and Eric coming at you through the Internet Talk Radio blowtorch of the fastener industry.
Your super channel to everything about fasteners.
Huh, is that what we are?
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, most things about fasteners.
I like that where Rob was saying some of his customers are doing Google work.
Yeah, well, Google would probably like to hear that becoming a noun too.
And I think they're pretty used to that by now, but Google work in the fastener world, that's a good thing. I bet you, of course, he won't be able to talk about that on the show, but man, some of the pickles his customers have gotten themselves into.
Right.
I bet you he's had to untangle some real messes.
Yeah. And of course that's sort of changing. You know, Google and Facebook are really now in a life or death battle. I mean, it's only evident if you read all the IT stuff, but they're fighting for supremacy of the new media connections. So one day it'll be a Facebook rather than a Google.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how all this plays out. There's going to be no clear winners for quite some time, but I tend to agree with what you're saying, the gist of it at least. And also more and more involvement with fastener industries and Twitter. And Rob was also talking about the Vegas show and what's going to happen at the Sands. I have it on good authority that one of the meeting places this year for the Vegas show is going to be a place called Dos Caminos. It's at least the official sanctioned meeting place. But other industries are using Twitter as kind of, well, I've heard it called the CB radio of the modern era. And so people are using it to communicate and set up meeting places just on the fly. I wonder if that'll happen this year in Vegas. Yeah, what we need is a fastener flash mob.
Right. If you have no idea what that is, just read Chicago newspapers.
Yeah. Any headline will do.
Right.
Yeah, well, we don't necessarily need that sort of activity, but I think you get the point. And with that, why don't we thank the guests on today's show? We sure do appreciate everybody's participation. And they were Marc Strandquist of Dokka Fasteners, Rob Lucas of Fidelis Fasteners, Holden Lewis of BB&T Capital Markets, and as always, Mike McNulty of Fastener Technology International Magazine. Sorry to hear about the Indians there, Mike, but hey, it's a long season left to go.
All right.
Don't forget, we'd always be happy to hear from you. You can contact us at the email address ftr@fullythreaded.com. Check out our Twitter posts under the handle Fully Threaded. And please do communicate with us anytime using Facebook. We've got a page out there with a few regular contributors, and we sure would like to build on that.
Right, and if you have a dog that you think is a fastener dog to match the ones that are already up there, then post a picture.
There are a lot of really cute fastener dogs out there. That's all I got to say. And we want to see them up on the Facebook page.
Right.
Lastly, on the housekeeping details, if you're a user of an iPhone or a BlackBerry, you should subscribe to Fully Threaded Radio, and you can do that through iTunes and through BlackBerry. We're told on good authority that that's a pretty easy thing to do, too. You can carry the podcast with you on planes, in the car. More and more people are doing this, and it's the beauty of on-demand media, folks.
And you know that if you don't happen to have a smartphone yet, because you know you will, you can still listen to Fully Threaded online. You just click on the green button and listen, okay?
getting back to the story we were talking about at the top of the show about the NFDA and their announcement that they're reversing their membership policy for international members, there was some information there that I hadn't heard before near the end of the release, and it says, and I'm quoting, "The NFDA is committed to its active and expanding participation as one of 3 global charter members of the Global Platform of Fasteners, GPF, along with the Taiwan Fastener Trade Association and the European Fastener Distributor Association." It goes on a little bit more, but the point is I had not heard of that organization, and we're going to have to learn a little bit about that.
GPF. Wow, last time I heard that it stood for General Protection Fault, the old-time equivalent of the blue screen of death.
I thought the same thing. When you had a version of Windows 3.1 in the old days, you'd get that GPF and out go the lights for your computer.
Right, and then you'd sit around dumb thinking, what did I do? Usually nothing. It was Windows all by its little self.
That's right. And then Dr. Watson would come up and further confuse you, wouldn't actually tell you anything. Well, the Global Platform for Fasteners, I'm sure, has nothing to do with any of that, and whatever it is, we're going to find out and tell you all about it.
Right.
And with that, why don't we call episode 28 one for the history books? Thanks again for joining us, everybody.
Have a great couple of weeks, and we look forward to talking to you in our next episode.
That's right. For Brian Musker, this is Eric Dudas. Thanks again for listening, everyone, and we'll talk to you next time.
Fully Threaded Radio is a production of Fasteners Clearinghouse. Music provided by Audionautics.
I can't think of anything else to say at the moment, okay?